All right, people, let's get into it. I am Garrett, and in this video, we are going to be talking about how to shoot your very own optical lens flare effects, transitions, overlays, all of that kind of stuff. Stick around to the end because I am doing a giveaway of some cool stuff. But first, let's talk about the overlays. If you remember the intro that you just watched 10 seconds ago, if you can't remember that, I don't know what's wrong with you. There were all of these really cool lens flare-y type things happening over the footage, none of which was shot when I shot that footage. I did that all after the fact. I just put in the lens flares today, even though that footage I shot a couple of years ago. The best part about recording your lens flares separately from your video files is that we can adjust the intensity, right? From 100% to 0%, or stack multiple lens flares on top of our footage, adjust the timing of all of it to get the exact look that we want. That's my dog. So let's break down how to film your own lens flare effects. We're gonna look at 3 different types of lens effects today, all of which are recorded pretty much the same way, but with very different looking final results. To do this, you're going to need a couple of things. You're going to need a camera, like this little guy here. On the other side of that, you're going to want a completely black surface. So things like this is a negative fill, a flag, a floppy. It's called a lot of different things, but it is just a totally black frame that has this really nice absorbent fabric on it. Now, you don't have to use a negative fill. You can use any sort of cloth surface that's black. You just want to make sure that it's not going to reflect light. So something like this, which is nice because there's no seams or wrinkles, and it is a fabric that's going to absorb light and not reflect light, works really, really well. But if you want to use a bed sheet, if you want to use curtains, anything like that, that's fine. Just make sure it's cloth. Make sure it's black. Set this back down, it's ruining my light. On one side, we have the camera. On the other, we have our black cloth. You don't want the camera to be too close to the black cloth. You do want to make sure that there's some spatial distance between them, but you also want to make sure that the black cloth is covering the entirety of what the camera can see. You don't want to see things around the edges because then it defeats the purpose of having this non-reflective black surface. Generally, you'd probably just zoom in on the camera, make sure that it's far enough away, zoom in, make sure you're filling the entirety of your lens, and we're ready to go. If you've been on Instagram or Facebook in the last year, I'm sure you've seen things like this, where it's like a classic glass prism, or like these cool like little orb things with 1/4-20 mounts on the bottom, so you can kind of mount it onto handles or rigging of some kind. These work really, really well for what we're doing here. All of the lens flares in the opening sequence were shot just by using this prism. I didn't want to handhold my prism in front of the lens because I didn't want it to actually move. I wanted it to kind of be locked into place. So instead of using kind of a hand grip like this, I took the 1/4-20 on the bottom of this and I mounted it via a friction arm directly onto my camera, locked it into place, put it in a couple of different positions, and then just shone my flashlight around. That's what gave me all of those cool lens flares. Now, you don't necessarily have to use a prism to get this look. You can use any sort of glass object that has any sort of shape to it. A flat surface won't do it. You're going to want to make sure that it has edges to it because that's what's going to give us that cool light refraction. Now that we have our objects, whatever those objects are, our flag, which I've banished over there, and our camera, we now want to make sure that we turn off all the lights. With all of the lights turned off, I'm not gonna do it because you won't be able to see me at all, but with all of the lights turned off, we then wanna take a high intensity flashlight, something like this. And the nice part about a flashlight like this is that you can actually adjust the beam angle of this light. So I can point it down here, but then I can like really focus that in. And the reason why we do this is because then, I don't know if you can see on the table, but I get all of these really kind of cool and interesting little light maneuvers. All you're going to want to do is push record on the camera, take whatever your glass object is, put it near, next to, around, close to your lens, take this flashlight, and then move around like so. This is going to give you really different, cool, interesting refractions of light, which that is what your camera is going to record. And it's going to record that light, those flares, against a completely black image. You saw an example at the beginning of what the prism effect would look like, but let's take a look at what anamorphic would be. None of that was shot with an anamorphic lens, and all of those lens flare transitions that have that kind of anamorphic characteristic to them, I shot after the fact, again, using that lens from that video there, with a flashlight using this exact same process. Because anamorphic lenses are cylindrical and not spherical, that flat front is going to kind of catch light in the corner, which is then what's going to give us those cool blue streaks. You could take your flashlight and kind of just hit the corner of that lens. You don't really necessarily want to like shine the light directly in. That's not going to give you anything that you can use. But without being in the frame, you want to get that light and kind of catch the corners of that lens. And that allowed me to apply exactly the type of lens flares that I wanted in the places that I wanted them, again, having that level of control. Nothing is different, you just don't need anything in front of the lens because the anamorphic lens is the thing that's going to create those lens flares anyway. The final effect that I want to show you, again, works the same way as the prism effect, but it is this kind of globe sphere thing. Now, this one is very different when we're talking about overlays versus shooting it practically, because if we were to shoot it practically, it does this, which is cool, but like very specific, and I don't know when I would use that. What I like about this particular thing in terms of filming your own overlays is that it gives you a really cool kind of glimmer or shimmer effect to your footage, like this. So you can see really soft, really easy on the eyes. It has this kind of really subtle but kind of cool shimmery vibe to it. That's stuff that I would use for things like music videos or beauty model type stuff. That is your prism, anamorphic, and glimmer effects that you can shoot yourself. Now, the next step is applying it to our footage. I use Premiere Pro, that's what I'm gonna show this in, but I'm sure that most of your other nonlinear editors are going to be somewhat similar in how you do this. In Premiere, you will see that I have my clip in my sequence here, and in order to apply my lens flare, I will select my lens flare. In this case, we will go with this glimmer flare. I will bring it onto the layer on top of my footage, like so, and you'll see here that it then appears in black like this. I will then select my lens flare layer, go over to Effects Controls, come down to Opacity, and change the blending mode to Screen. What that's going to do is that's going to remove anything of a negative value or black and dark gray and leave only the things that are in the highlights and the bright. And as I play through this, the flare comes in nicely over the top. And I can then move this, place this wherever I want in my sequence. I could even dial down the opacity if I didn't want it to be as intense, or adjust the scale of it to make it bigger or smaller in my frame. The process is exactly the same with anamorphic, except for one added step. Before we bring that flare footage on top of my sci-fi clip here, we need to go over to that footage, right-click on it, go to Modify, Interpret Footage. That's going to open up a window. We're going to go to the second pane down where it says Pixel Aspect Ratio. And from here, we will hit Conform to and change this to HD Anamorphic 1080. This is a 133 anamorphic D-squeeze. If you're shooting OpenGate or something like that, you can go ahead and use the 2:1, but generally speaking, this is the one that you will want to do. We will hit OK, and then we will enter that. And we'll see here that the aspect ratio of my footage changes to de-squeeze that anamorphic footage to give us those really nice long blue lens flares that are characteristic of anamorphic. From there, this would work the exact same way, where we'll just click and drag this down over the top of my footage. We will select this, go to Effect Controls, change my blending mode to Screen, and you'll see here that it now is showing the way that it is supposed to show. I can change the intensity, I can change the position, I can change the scale of this clip to get exactly what I want out of it. Now, I've already gone through the trouble of doing all of this, right? I bought all of the stuff, I set it all up, I recorded it, I exported it, I've put it on all of my footage. You've seen what that looks like. It's a great way of elevating your footage to the next level. But I figure if it's something that I'm already using and I already shot, that you guys could probably use it too. So I have put a link below to my store where you can buy these 3 packs. I did one for the Glimmer Shimmer, one for the Prism, and one for the Anamorphic, each of them having somewhere between 60 and 100 transitions and or overlays. For all you tech nerds out there, it's UHD 4K, 24 frames per second, shot in 422 10-bit, recorded from a GH5S onto an Atomos in ProRes. As promised, I am going to do a giveaway. I am giving away 5 sets of these. That includes all 3 of the packs, the Prism, the Shimmer, and the Anamorphic. For more details on that, go to my Instagram. Again, that's also in the links below. So if you want to get them for free, go there. If you want to purchase them for yourselves, there's also a discount code. Feel free to check that out. $5 off of each of them. I hope you found this helpful, and if you did, do me a favor, give this video a like. If you want to see more stuff like this, hit subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next episode. Whoa!